This lyrics you gon' get, but be careful what you ask for, cause you just might regret. Lyrics you want, this lyrics you gon' get, but be careful what you ask for, cause you just might regret. Rhapsody come with words, song and power. Rhapsody love to chant a cappella. Come and the bass is all he require, and he go fling down lyrics like water, like the griot in Mother Africa, like the Chantwell and the Midnight Robber. Rhapsody will just stand up and deliver, and have you in every word that he utter. Lyrics you want, this lyrics you go get, but be careful what you ask for, cause you just might regret. Lyrics you want, this lyrics you go get, but be careful what you ask for, cause you just might regret. Rhapsody stand firm for the culture, Rhapsody will never surrender. Rhapsody defend roots and culture, conscious lyrics to inform and inspire. Rhapsody respect the word of the father, so Rhapsody will never be vulgar. No fame, no money, no favor, will make the Rhapsody cross that border.
The official station that defends the nation. News from the street, 919fm.com. Here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. I am Vanessa Thomas with the 4 o'clock news on the streets, 919 FM, and online Facebook and YouTube. In the headlines, the finance minister says there is no dollar devaluation. Budget debate comes to an abrupt end. Monday morning protests in Barrackpore over bad roads, and internationally fuel shortage forces shutdown of Lebanon's main power plants. And now the news in detail. Finance Minister Com Imbert said this country's economic standing is in a good position and is projected to continue to do well. Speaking at Friday's People's National Movement post-budget forum in Belmont, Minister Imbert noted that weeks before the budget was presented, the government was advised to cut public expenditure to meet revenue and devaluate the TNT dollar, advice which the minister rejected.
We had listened to them. They told us back in September 2015, the advisors came telling us what to do. They said, devalue the dollar 10 to 1. You say, why is that? They say, if you don't devalue the dollar 10 to 1, within 6 months, Trinidad and Tobago will run out of foreign exchange and the whole country will crash. Well, 6 years later, we have US $7 billion in foreign reserve. 6 years later.
Minister Imbert said the devaluation will have dire consequences for the less fortunate in society, including a 50% increase in the cost of living and a decrease in wages and purchasing power. The minister noted that instead the government took another route.
To try and maintain inflation and try and keep it below 1%. And it has remained at 1% or below until just very recently it went up to 2%. The only reason it's 2% is because of worldwide shortages of basic commodities and increased freight cost. And we don't believe that that will last forever. And we expect inflation to go back down to below 2%. But if you listen to them, there will be a 50% inflation.
In other news, the debate of the budget 2022 ended much sooner than anticipated in the House of Representatives on Saturday. This as opposition members refused to add anything further to the debate, saying they had taken issue with statements made the day before by the Attorney General. Things began going downhill on day 2 of the debate following the contribution of Member of Parliament for Davide O'Meara, Lisa Morris-Julie.
As far as we are concerned, vaccination and education go hand in hand. I thank you very much, Mr.
Deputy House Speaker Edmund Ford signaled it was the opposition's turn to continue with the debate. Leader of Government Business in the House of Representatives, Mrs. Camille Robinson-Regis, also interjected.
You're not putting in anybody else at this time?
Members, please, the session.
I feel like we are being misled, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Members, the sitting is still in session.
After a delay, Member of Parliament for Oropouche East, Dr. Ruda Munilal, rose and explained that the opposition had taken serious issue with the budget contribution of Attorney General Faris Alrawi. Munilal said the statements made about the opposition leader, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisasa, were untrue.
The statement that the members of the family of the leader of the opposition, having received government rentals, is absolutely false, untrue, and misleading. I submit that the honourable member has committed a breach of privilege of the House. In this regard, Honourable Speaker, I refer this matter for your urgent attention and determination.
With none of the opposition members indicating that they wished to continue with the debate, Finance Minister Com Imbert ended it abruptly.
In their very weak contributions to this debate, they couldn't challenge any of the measures in the budget. And that is why their contributions have collapsed. So having said all of that, Madam Speaker, and since they have nothing to say, I beg to move.
In more news, residents of Barrackpore burned tires early this morning in protest over the bad road conditions in their area. From as early as 5 a.m., several areas were blocked off, as far as number 6 near St. Mary's Maruga to Lau Bihari Trace, Lower Barrackpore. The residents were shouting, "Fix our roads right now, no water since May, we know our right."
One road fix. Government forget we live down here. We don't have no road. No road fix and even out now. Some people need to fix. You have to fix the road. When you come and fix the road, please, you have to patch road. You have to pave the whole road. You have to grade. Pave the road. Pave the road. When you pave the road, you want smooth road. Pave the road. You want water. You want West Mill when you go up. Yeah.
And finally, on the international scene, Lebanon's 2 main power plants were forced to shut down after running out of fuel, the state electricity company said on Saturday, leaving the small country with no government-produced power. Lebanon is grappling with a crippling energy crisis made worse by its dependency on fuel imports. Erratic power supplies have put hospitals and essential services in crisis mode. Here we have more in this Al Jazeera report.
The state electricity network has again collapsed. A lack of fuel forced Lebanon's largest power stations to shut down. It's the 4th time in the past months that shortages caused a countrywide blackout. A deep economic crisis means a cash-strapped state is struggling to import energy resources.
We used to have electricity for an hour daily. Now it is totally cut. We are spending our time outside our homes so our children can have fun.
The total power outage has practically been the case for months. State electricity in most places has been available for an hour or 2 a day. The company is now trying to use the Army's reserves to operate its power plants temporarily before the expected arrival of a fuel shipment. But the state-run plants have run poorly for decades.
There's been no electricity in Beirut since yesterday, and private generators are too expensive. How can we survive?
The energy sector has been a huge drain on the state's finances for decades. Its annual losses reach $1.5 billion. Successive governments have continued to sustain the system instead of fixing it. They've subsidized fuel and maintained a bloated workforce as part of the political parties' patronage networks. The international community has been demanding the restructuring of the sector before it approves financial assistance. There has been no political will. Instead, the authorities made a deal with Iraq to swap fuel for medical services, and the new government is negotiating supplies of electricity from Jordan and natural gas from Egypt via Syria. But those deals are likely to take months, and it may help ease the crisis, but it won't resolve it. Lebanese households have had to put up with daily power cuts since the end of the civil war in 1990. But now, the local currency has lost 90% of its value. It means only a few are able to afford private generators, while hospitals, bakeries, and other essential services are in crisis mode. For many here, the electricity company has come to symbolize the corruption and mismanagement blamed for the economic collapse that has all but paralyzed the country. Sana Khuder, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
And that was the 4 o'clock news on the streets, 919 FM, and online Facebook and YouTube. Recapping the headlines. The finance minister says there is no dollar devaluation. Budget debate comes to an end abruptly. Monday morning protest in Barrackpore over bad roads, and internationally fuel shortage forces shutdown of Lebanon's main power plants. Do enjoy your afternoon and continue to be safe. I am Vanessa Thomas. Aisha Wells, she's up next.
News from the street. News from the street. 919fm.com. Broadcasting from Trinidad to the world. The Street 919.